We had a bit of a surprise announcement this week as Nintendo has now made it official that a game will be leaving the service. You could say deleted from the service, removed, and it does make you wonder just based on a few things around that title, but it has sparked a lot of conversation online on if this is something that could become more common going forward, especially as the system continues to get a bit older and maybe some of those contracts or terms that were written up years ago start to expire or come back up for renewal and stuff. And this is the first time we've seen Nintendo officially do this, so it has people wondering, we'll say, about the future of NSO, and some even calling for the Virtua Console to return. Again, a lot to go over, but we'll take a look at that here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. So the game that Nintendo is delisting is Super Soccer. They made that announcement. This was over on their account, where they say the title Super Formation Soccer, Spike Chunsoft, included in Super Famicom Nintendo Switch Online, will cease distribution on Friday, March 28th, 2025 at 10 a.m. After the distribution ends, even those who have already downloaded Super Famicom Nintendo Switch Online will no longer be able to use it. So I'll say something very obvious here. I don't think the conversation around what's happening has much to do with the title itself. Like Super Soccer. It's like, yeah, I don't think that's moving a lot of subscription services necessarily. Not that there aren't people who maybe were scrolling through the list of games like, oh, cool, Super Soccer, or just soccer in general. I'll fire it up and see what it's about exactly. Or maybe there are some out there who have nostalgia for that game. My point is, it's not a big headline title. It's not a Mario or something that's like, wow, I want to subscribe because I want to play this Super Nintendo game or N64 game I remember from back in the day that Nintendo created, right? No, in this case, Super Soccer, it's more about the stuff around it. It came out in Japan in 1991 and then just worldwide in 1992 on the Super Nintendo. And it was published by Human Entertainment. They're no longer around. And it seems that the rights for publishing Super Soccer, just that in general, went to Spike Chunsoft, who is now owned by Kadokawa. And what we think is happening here, because Nintendo they haven't told us, and the belief is that there was something going on there with Kadokawa, Spike Chunsoft in Japan specifically, because that's where the announcement was made, and it didn't seem like it was going to affect maybe NSO services outside of Japan, because we do have like different variations of games that'll be announced. No, it actually looks like, as more information has come out, that it's leaving the service everywhere. So it's not just a Japan thing for this one. And I originally thought, okay, maybe it is just that. It's because outside of Japan, back in 1992, Nintendo published the game. So I thought, oh, well, it's regional. Okay, it's not something that's going to be completely across the board for the service. No, it seems to be. So yes, we will have Super Soccer leave NSO at the end of March at this time. Things can change, of course, in the background. I don't know if Super Soccer is like up on their priority list of, we got to keep this in the service. How is it going to work without it? No, I think in this instance, if, say, Spike Chunsoft, as they're labeling here, is thinking, that would work well in a collection at some point down the road, but we got to get it off NSO. You know what? Fine. Or maybe more money was required to keep it there. That's the other part about this, right? So games that exist in the service that aren't Nintendo, some kind of deal had to be reached to make that possible. Of course, with money. And generally, there's like a term for like how long you can have a game in a service. So think about your Game Pass or your PlayStation Plus. Games cycle in and out of there all the time. Like, it's common. Usually you get a list of games going in for the month, and then at the bottom, say for Game Pass, here's a list of games that are leaving. It's a constant cycle. It's a constant back and forth with Microsoft trying to get different games in there from third parties to fill out the selection of titles. The thing that's been so interesting about NSO is that games just don't leave it. Even third-party titles, and there are many of them, have stayed there since they were originally released into the service. Now, it was like every month for a while. Now it's kind of scattershot, but really there are many games that are like 1 year old, 2 years old, 5 years old. Like it is kind of hard to keep track of how long they've been here, and it does make you wonder if some of these have a 10-year term, and maybe we'd come up to that in a couple of years. Super Soccer, that could have had like a 5-year term or something like that. And we're like, okay, now we're getting up to the end of it, and they don't necessarily want to renew it, or too much money is being asked, right? that part is more speculation and just trying to put the pieces together, looking from the outside in. But the thing with NSO, and it's been pointed out a lot, is the subscription service here is probably the least flexible out of all of them, in the sense that games do stay there, but you never have the option of buying them. So PlayStation Plus Premium, of course, they've been doing this push over the last couple of years, adding in older retro titles. Like PS2 games have recently started going in, and when they show up, yes, it's in your PlayStation Plus Premium account. You can just download it, but you do have the option of buying it. Game Pass has been doing this, like, obviously for a long time now, and in fact, they'll even add a discount to sort of try to push you in that direction of buying the title. And when they do let you know a game's leaving, hey, you can still take advantage of the discount and stuff if you want to add it to your library. That doesn't exist for NSO. So technically, when I guess the term runs up and maybe they decide not to renew or something, the game's just gone. So even if you had the game downloaded, yes, they can indeed pull it from your system. Something else people had epiphanies of is like, wow, really? They can do that. Yes, they can do that. We've seen that before with other examples from different companies where a demo got out there early and they pulled it back. PT got out there, they pulled it back. Like, so many different ways that this has been proven, but people still continue to be surprised by the level of control that these platform holders have in a digital environment, even with games that you believe you fully own, sure. So that is, I think, a major weak point here that's being shown more than ever with this, is that we can't buy the games. And that is something that I think people who really call for the virtual console have a great point with. Now, it was not a great setup with the Wii and the Wii U, and that's because Nintendo's account system then was like archaic. I mean, they still have some work to do now, clearly, but I mean, at that time, it was linked to your console. It wasn't linked to an email address or account you set up, so it wouldn't follow you from system to system, even generation to generation, as we're seeing Microsoft and Sony pull that off now with issues sometimes, but not like a ton or anything. It's pretty straightforward to log into a system, and then all your download catalog is there. Nintendo has been able to do this now with the Switch, but before, they couldn't. So the virtual console was great in a vacuum, in the sense that if you kept your Wii for good and it always worked, you had your games. If you lost it or it just broke, that's kind of it. Now, though, they have the ability to do it, but they're not selling these games, which seems to be, I think, part of this whole picture for them with the current service. Not necessarily to push you into subscribing, but maybe some of the back-end dealings are a bit looser and more in favor of Nintendo by going that route, because if you technically can't buy it, it still makes sense for some of these companies to sell these games in a collection, because that's the way you'd really be able to own, quote-unquote, the game. I mean, if it's on a physical disc or something, there you go. But I feel like there's a wrinkle there to that, some of the dealings around that. I mean, if you look at GoldenEye, which is an example of a game that right now I'm like, oh, okay, Super Soccer's gone. It's possible for a game to leave. I look at how dicey the rights are around that game, and that's one that I wouldn't be shocked if it also left. Like, probably a couple of years or something. I would assume still on it. But if you look at Game Pass, you can't buy that one. That's one of the few games you look at there, and you can't actually purchase it for your library. Even with Rare Replay, if you have a physical disc of Rare Replay, you can't get GoldenEye. It has to be specifically digital-only Rare Replay to then be able to download GoldenEye, and it's still linked to the game and the account and everything, to where if they pulled it back, it would just go away. So when I look at things like GoldenEye, I look at that entire Genesis app that Nintendo has for NSO. I look at the Rare games, Konami, Bandai Namco, Capcom, THQ Nordic, and more. It does make me wonder if, okay, we see Super Soccer go away. Are we going to start getting to a point, as the system is just about 8 years old now, I think that's this week on Monday, are we going to start hearing about more games that start dropping out of the service? Will this become a more common thing? I will at least give them credit. They've done a pretty good job up until this point for this to not be a situation, and we're just talking about it for the first time 7 years after the service initially launched with, like Nintendo? So in that regard, yes, but it does make me look at this and go, we should have a virtual console option to buy the games. I think that makes sense. I don't really know anyone who would push up against that when it's just more options for purchasing. And yes, digital ownership, but at least some sort of ownership to mitigate issues when it comes to something like this, where games can just disappear out of the service. But certainly something to keep an eye on here as the system continues to get older and older, and maybe these deals continue to work towards their expiration. If this is something that we can expect in the future to happen more and more. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Do you think going into the Switch 2, maybe Nintendo should consider the idea of having a separate virtual console, still linked to the subscription service to make it so you can buy easily, maybe in those different applications, but a way for you to be able to also buy the games if you want to? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.